Cheryl. Welcome back to my channel. This is the third time I tried to film this video. I'm sorry for no video yesterday. I've been having a bunch of technical difficulties. That's what you get for filming on a phone and editing on a laptop that's 50 years old. So we're just gonna roll with it, pretend it didn't happen. I'll either upload 2 small videos today or a really long one and a small one tomorrow, but we're just gonna go with it. Like I said, I know the spookiest thing about this video is probably my lipstick and the really cheesy background, but I hope you guys can bear with me, and at least I'm uploading. So if you see me looking to my right, it's because my notes are right there. Like I said, I can't read notes off my phone because I'm recording with it. Still no camera. Fingers crossed that I get a new camera for Christmas, but we're just gonna go with it. Today we're talking about Today we're talking about the true origin or the real story of Halloween. So why did Halloween begin, and why did we start celebrating it? It began with the Celtic pagan holiday, which a lot of us know that it became known for a pagan holiday. The holiday was called Samhain. I think I'm saying that right. On October 31st, people would put out food and wine and different things on their doorstep to kind of thank their ancestors for a plentiful harvest. The harvest was September, October, November, kind of during those cold months, and that's how they believed that their ancestors were the ones who kind of gave them the good harvest, so that's how they would thank them. It was also believed that October 31st, during this night, the veil between the living and the dead was the thinnest. So we were able to communicate with the dead were communicating with us. Kind of the veil that we have between us and the underworld was the thinnest on this night. It's also even been noted back as far as the Romans. Apparently, the Romans would leave apples on their doorstep, like extra apples they had. I think that's where we got the whole bobbing for apples thing. They would leave apples on their doorsteps to thank the gods for the plentiful harvest. Celebrations and harvest festivals, were held on the 1st of November, which was called All Hallows Day. So that's where we get the term All Hallows Eve. It was the night before November 1st. On this day, they would celebrate again their ancestors, thanking them for a plentiful harvest. There would be huge harvest festivals for the whole town where they'd share goods and just celebrate the harvest. In the 1800s, the traditions of All Hallows Eve actually started from the Catholic Church, which is kind of weird to think about, that the Catholic Church or the Catholic religion kind of started this whole Halloween thing, especially when it was stemming from a pagan holiday. But they believed that, again, that this was the night that the veil was the thinnest, and they also believed that this was the night where demons and ghosts were able to roam the earth and come and torment the living. So why do we wear costumes? That's kind of where it began. People began wearing costumes to try and blend in with the demons. So let's say I was dressed as a demon and one goes by, they're going to see me and be like, oh, hey, you're just another demon. So they were trying to blend in hopes that these demons and ghosts would actually leave them alone. Kids especially were dressed up, and that's kind of where the whole Halloween being for kids things kind of comes in. There's a few more other stories of why kids were chosen for this holiday, I guess, but for now we're just going to talk about this. Kids were especially dressed in these disguises in hopes to ward off the demons and stuff from essentially taking their children. So why do we hand out candy or go trick-or-treating? During the Celtic years on this holiday, townspeople, as well as priests and reverends and people who performed kind of holy work like this, would go door to door knocking on people's doors. They were given a treat, some kind of cake or candy or food, something like that. In exchange, they would pray for the people that lived in their house, and their house would be blessed in hopes that, again, these demons or ghosts wouldn't come to their house. The term trick-or-treat kind of stemmed from this. It was kind of like, hey, you give us a treat, otherwise you're going to be tricked by these demons and ghosts that are going to come to your house if we don't bless it. It's also known to have come about in the early 1900s, where kids whose families kind of struggled with that harvest that year, they would go door to door to their neighbors, knocking, and they would perform a song or destroying my own set. They'd perform a song or tell a joke in exchange for some kind of good or some kind of fruit or vegetable that that family had harvested that year to give back to their family. And sadly, otherwise, if they weren't given that kind of treat, they would play a trick or some kind of prank on that house or that family. So why do we set out jack-o'-lanterns on our porches? So I kind of found this folklore story. I can't say that word. Folklore story. Kind of doesn't go with the rest of everything that I'm talking about, like the actual timelines of events. This is kind of just like a side story, but I thought I'd include it. It was a story about a guy named Jack. He had made some kind of deals with the devil, kind of worked with the devil in some kind of sorts, where Satan had actually said, hey, if you work with me and, kind of help me out in whatever I need, you, when you die, will be able to kind of be like my right-hand man. You'll be able to live in the underworld with me right by my side. So he was like, okay, sure. But when he actually started to come close to death, he realized this isn't what he wanted, and he actually did want to go to heaven. So when he died, his soul tried to go to heaven, but God was like, no, you worked with the devil. So then his soul went down, tried to get into the underworld with Satan, and Satan was like, I tricked you, dude, just kidding. And he actually banished this guy Jack's soul into a pumpkin for eternity, and that's where the whole jack-o'-lantern came to be. It's also known that, it's also known that people carved these kind of scary faces and lit them up with candles and stuff to kind of ward off the demons and the ghosts that were roaming the town during this night of October 31st. And actually, in the early 1900s, jack-o'-lanterns, which I'll try and insert a picture right here, jack-o'-lanterns were made with turnips, which they are just terrifying. If you look at them, they look like mummies or some creepy thing, but thankfully, later on, they started making jack-o'-lanterns in pumpkins, which look a lot better than the turnips. So as for like symbols like black cats and bats and bats and stuff, why do we associate those with Halloween? Why are black cats such a symbol of bad luck, and why do we associate with them with Halloween? So during the infamous witch trials during the late 1600s, which my next video is going to be all about the Salem witch trials, so definitely subscribe and put those notifications on, that way you'll know when I do upload that video. But during those witch trials, a woman was accused and found guilty and put in jail of being a witch, and she was actually sentenced to be executed. Well, when the guards went in the next day to, essentially take her to her hanging, all they saw in the jail cell, I can't say that. All they found in the jail cell was a black cat. So then it started getting rumored that maybe, black cats were actually witches in disguise. So sadly, that's why a lot of black cats were then killed and sacrificed, because they believed that these black cats were actually witches. As far as bats being a symbol for Halloween, so it's kind of simple. I don't know why they didn't get this back then, but so insects are attracted to light. There was light inside of these pumpkins. Well, bats are attracted to insects. So when they had these pumpkins with the lights inside, the candle lights inside of them, they attracted insects. Well, those insects attracted bats. Well, they saw that as, oh, well, maybe these demons or ghosts are summoning these bats to get us, or maybe they're vampires and everything. So that's where the whole bat symbolism comes into Halloween. Some other notes about Halloween. In the early days of All Hallows Eve, the holiday was actually known as Halloween, but a apostrophe in between the two E's. But later on, it was accidentally printed as just Halloween as we know it, and then it just stuck, and that's how we know Halloween. It was really in the 1950s that people kind of really started to take to Halloween, started dressing up. Some of the costumes back then, again, I'll try and insert a picture, but the costumes back then were just terrifying. They were just like these weird masks, and I don't know, but somehow in the 1950s, which I think was when the Catholic religion started really coming back, and that's maybe where they pulled the Halloween traditions back out of the grave. No pun intended. But that's when our Halloween that we know really started to come to life. Again, no pun intended. But as much as Halloween is aimed for kids and seems like a very harmless, just fun holiday, sadly it is really a lot more darker, especially with these kind of darker religions such as Satanism, paganism, even Wiccans, which I know there's some Wiccans on YouTube who celebrate it in kind of a harvesty way and everything. Completely understand that, but there are some extremists of all these kind of darker religions that still relate it to the prospect of connecting with the dead and connecting with demons and bringing this dead back to life, and just really take this whole holiday that we know and love as just kind of a fun thing into some dark and sinister thing that stems from Satan, sadly. And they also are known to sacrifice animals like black cats, and sadly even sometimes sacrificing humans, in order to use this night where the veil is very thin to appease their lord and hopefully gain some kind of, what's the word, eternal life, and to secure their immortality. So sadly this night is known for some darker things, but thankfully we know it as just a fun holiday, going trick-or-treating, no harm in that, and we'll just go on with our little happy Halloween that we love. So last thing is, the US is the main country that celebrates this holiday. There are a lot of countries that are starting to kind of adapt Halloween, which I think is kind of cool. They sadly don't know the dark history of it, but I think we can kind of push that aside and just move forward just with our regular Halloween. We don't always have to look back to the past. But a lot of a lot of countries are starting to adapt this holiday, which I think is really cool. But the US itself spends over $6 billion in the month of October alone, in the past few years at least, just on costumes and candy. Just in the month of October. Just for Halloween. So it's definitely, you know, we may see it as this really fun holiday, our kids see it as this cool holiday, they get lots of candy, but retailers see it as this big money grab. So again, sadly, there's always the big money sides of Halloween and Christmas, which during Christmas I'll go into another story about how Christmas is really a cash cow for lots of people. But anyways, I know this was short. I hope you guys enjoyed it, maybe learned something new. If there's any other old Halloween facts that you guys know that I didn't mention, leave them in the comments below, and let me know if you're excited for my next video, which is the Salem Witch Trials, which I just find so interesting. And my next video is going to be a huge video, very long, very creepy, very exciting. I'll give you a little hint. If you've ever heard the story about Dear David, that's what I'm talking about. So until then, I will see you guys in my next one. Stay creative, and yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.